Today we tackle the recently deceased DCEU, or rather, it will die in the next calendar year. It's been announced, but sort of. We'll take a look at the history of the DCU and how we arrived at this untimely death. My name is Jim. I will be your pal for today, and this is the Jim Pal Podcast. All right, welcome in, everybody. You can find us anywhere. Podcasts are available, as well as on YouTube for a video version of this podcast, as well as TikTok, Twitter, and, of course, Twitch.tv. I stream on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we usually go for about 2 hours or so. Now, to analyze what happened to DCEU, I split it up into really two main sections. I first will analyze the movies themselves that have come out to this point, and then the main actors and actresses involved. I couldn't spend too long on each individual thing, each individual item, actor, actress, or the movie themselves, only because this podcast would be 6 hours long if we decided to, really go in depth. So if you're looking for a more in-depth analysis of a particular movie, by all means, let me know in the comments below. And if there's enough people, looking for that, certainly we could certainly do a follow-up video at some point in the future. All right, so we'll start with the films. First and foremost, you got to go back to the beginning. I'll do these in release order. So 2013, so 10 years ago, well, 11, I guess, at this point, Man of Steel. I know it was controversial, but I really like this one. It was our first Superman movie in 7 years, and the CGI budget was clearly far bigger, and it was far better than the previous version. It was a story of a man who knows he doesn't belong on this planet, but he's here anyway. He knows what he could do, and that just makes it tough for him to fit in. This was the main point of the first movie. It's really not a bad place to start. Superman's dramatic arrival in the public eye in viewers kicks things off, and it draws elements out of the shadows that were kind of there, kind of forming. So it really is a good place to start a shared universe. Unfortunately for Man of Steel, we just had a little movie the year before that changed cinema for the next 11 years, Avengers, and unfortunately a lot of the visuals kind of look very similar. And I know this might annoy some DC fans, but you really can't talk about the DCEU without talking about the MCU. I'll try and limit it, but it's possible. First and foremost, the third acts of both movies really have similar visuals. You talk about a city being destroyed, high-tech aliens coming to Earth, to the biggest city, to have a slugfest with the hero or heroes. There's a beam of light going into the sky, mass destruction, and the hero or heroes win in the end. Everyone cheers. Man of Steel really did go for it, leveling several city blocks, which of course seemed a bit over the top. But hey, they weren't sure if they wanted to actually go for a shared universe at the time. Sure, there were several Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the movie. You had Star Labs being teased, Wayne Enterprises, LexCorp. But there were no castings, there were no appearances, no cameos, and nothing else was really discussed in any real detail. They were just kind of little things added in. You could have even done that in post-production, frankly, with the level of Easter eggs that you had. If you were to give it a fair comparison, you could use Iron Man, as that was the first installment of the MCU. However, Iron Man had several castings. They had Agent Coulson, very prominent in the movie throughout, Nick Fury, to tell you straight up where this was going. At the end of the movie, he goes, hey, we're doing the Avengers. Period, full stop. This is where it's going. And, of course, everyone loses their minds. He's here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. We're assembling. And Man of Steel really had no tease of a bigger universe, and that's my biggest complaint about the DCO. They never seem to want to commit. It's always, let's see what happens at the box office for the next installment, and then we may change strategies. That's not the way to do it. Adults, they devise a plan and follow it. Children do what feels good, if I might quote, the financial guru, Dave Ramsey. Just make the movies good, go in it with a solid plan, and people will come. People will come out. Again, clearly the MCU had a plan. And look, MCU shouldn't have had a plan. They were desperate. They were about to file bankruptcy. If Iron Man failed, that was going to be the end. Warner Brothers Discovery, or I guess Warner Brothers at the time, there was no danger of that at the time. But I guess maybe that's the difference, is that Marvel had to succeed, whereas opposed to Warner Brothers, they were just like, well, let's just see what happens. If it fails, yeah, who cares? If it does well, great. But the bottom line is, if you make a solid universe, people will come. That's basically the bottom line. All right, so you had some mild success with Man of Steel, and of course the executives get excited and they go, okay, great, we're going to jump right in. Let's do this now. And we're going to do Batman v Superman, and we're just going to throw all the shared universe stuff in your face. Now, all the stuff that we were holding back in Man of Steel, now we're going to do it. So Batman v Superman. First and foremost, I wouldn't have even have let it be known that Wonder Woman was in the movie. As far as the marketing goes, I would have kept it a secret, Nick Fury style. Sure, there would have been leaks, there would have been rumors, but audiences would, for the most part, have been surprised. Can you imagine the pandemonium when she drops in to save Batman, and ta-da, guess what? It's Superman. It's one. I screwed that up. Ta-da, it's Wonder Woman, guys. I could hear the cheers coming from the alternate universes theaters now. It would have been on par with Captain America catching Mjolnir. It really would have been nice. Also, Doomsday would have been something I would not have touched so early on. It's way too soon to kill Superman. That needed to really be saved for movie 8 or 9, once you've established how the world really relied on him and now had it taken away. I would have had Lex use the Kryptonian tech to build himself a suit. Instead, that is obviously fueled by kryptonite, and yeah, that's why he needs Batman to use his intellect to figure out how to take Lex out with his suit. Once again, third act problems with the massive destruction. It was eye-rolling that they added in that the area they were fighting in was uninhabited. It's like, okay, you have these big metropolises you keep fighting in, like Metropolis and Gotham, and, obviously they're very well aware. They make it known that they're very, very well aware of the criticism that Man of Steel got in the third act, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to destroy stuff, but nobody got hurt. And it's just like, it's just another sign that they listen to their fans, excuse me. The extended universe feels much better, and you really feel that the studio interference killed this one. Watching the extended version, you kind of really got a better sense as to why they disagreed so wholeheartedly. But again, you have a villain coming in and interfering. So I think overall the movie is okay. I think if you made a couple of changes, I really feel like the movie could have been really something special and gotten the universe off to a solid start. But again, it's there's going to be a common theme throughout this entire podcast. It's unrealized potential. All right, Wonder Woman. This one was great, fantastic movie. Gal plays the fish out of water role so well. Jesus, she's used to an environment populated only by women and is dropped into a world dominated by men. So it's cool to see how she interacts. When she's trying on the dress, and she's like, "Oh, how do you even fight with this?" And the woman's like, "What do you mean fight? Why would you want to fight?" And she's like, "Well, I kind of want to." Her debut halfway through the movie, when she puts on the outfit, was iconic, coming out of the foxhole. My God, it's one of the best in cinematic history. There's a reason it ended up in every trailer and every poster. There really is. It perfectly demonstrates her abilities and what she means to the world. Ares was a perfect villain for a character that struggles with their own internal battle of calling to war, but not realizing what that entirely means. Guys, they tried to do this with the first Thor movie, and this movie does it better, in my opinion. Not to, trash on Chris Hemsworth, but it took him a few movies to figure it out. And Gal figures it out right away, how to do it properly. And, Patty Jenkins, obviously deserves some credit there as well. It was very metaphorical, and ultimately it worked. Dr. Poison was a great addition for a secondary villain that Ares can use at the end to fuel Wonder Woman's internal struggle. Like, hey, look, here's this, this is why humans stink. You got this human right here who's just trying to, come up with different ways to torture people and whatnot. So this is why, they can't be trusted. So it was really, the third act really shines with this one. And the fact that it's a big blowout fight, but they have it on a military base, it feels a little better than the other two movies. So, because it's like, okay, well, this is what happens at military outposts. They have wars. Themyscira was very well realized. I like the way they took their time to introduce it. No third act issues, like I said, as you limit the damage to an already war-torn area on a base with soldiers. And like I said, they take the right lessons from Man of Steel. There are stakes without going overboard on the death and destruction, which, again, solid movie. And yeah, no, I got no complaints about Wonder Woman. I just wish it came out. Well, I guess you could leave it in place if you had done the changes that I suggested in Batman v Superman. But if you weren't going to do that, then I might have had it take. I would have moved that release date ahead of Batman v Superman. But it is what it is. Suicide Squad. I'm talking about the 2016 version for clarification, because anytime they add the word "the" in front of a sequel, it kind of gets a little confusing as to what movie you're actually talking about. This one was tough. Margot Robbie makes her debut, and she's very solid as the character, and we'll get into that more a little later. Amanda Waller's very well realized. Other than that, I really feel like this one misses the mark. There are very few positive things to say. They have several relatively unknown characters that they spend way too much time introducing. For me, this is where the DCU starts to go off the rails. BVS had issues, sure, but not enough to derail things. This one kind of makes it worse and starts to kill the universe. Again, you spent 40 minutes just trying to introduce characters and get the audience caught up. If you had taken your time introducing a universe and introducing these characters one at a time through a Flash movie, you could have Captain Boomerang in the Flash movie. You could have a Batman movie featuring, Jared Leto and Margot Robbie as their characters with Ben Affleck, and then, okay, now it makes sense. You don't have to spend time on them as much as you did. But they didn't do that. They tried to introduce all these different characters and throw them in all at once, and it kind of gets a little messy. The main villain being Entrantius and her brother was just a little bit too much. It just seemed a little too fantastical for the Suicide Squad to be fighting. The beam of light in the sky was visually very similar to what we've seen in recent memory from comic book movies. I mean, heck, even in your own universe, you just did it with Man of Steel, 3 years earlier. Obviously, Avengers did it. The Fantastic Four 2015 version, I know we want to forget it, but I'm just going to mention it for a second. They did it. You can't do it again. And having Will Smith comment on the swirling ring of trash in the sky doesn't save it. You can't acknowledge it and then say, oh, can we get away with it at the same time? I'm sorry, I can't do that. I can't let you get away with that one. Having the Joker felt tacked on. They marketed him heavily, and he barely mattered in the grand scheme of the plot. He shows up in really one scene to impact the main storyline, and then his helicopter goes down, and then that's it. So it just feels wasted. Rick Flag walking around with the letters from Deadshot's daughter on him is just weird. Like, why were you doing that? The dialogue gets weird at times. And throwing Harley Quinn back in jail at the end just to have her broken out before the credits roll is an odd choice. I mean, you could have, I feel like you could have done something to just have her escape during the climax, and that would have been, just as good. Maybe bring the Joker back in at the end, and, oh no, I'm not really dead. And clearly there's a David Ayers cut out there. We're never getting it at this point. I mean, guys, it's been 7 years. I just don't see it. Obviously, we got a Snyder cut. I get that. But, considering the changes they made, I just don't see an Ayers cut at any point. I would be curious to see it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to tell you what I think will happen versus what I want to happen. But the music was solid. They had solid music. They clearly had seen Guardians of the Galaxy, the creators, and they said, oh, we're going to do that. Again, this one is kind of like where things start to fall apart a little bit. All right, next up, Justice League. This is also a weird one to rank because there are two very distinct versions. Zack Snyder's version is definitively better. Multiple characters are better realized with Snyder's version, specifically Flash and Cyborg. And the plot makes more sense. The need for Superman is more apparent with the Snyder version, or rather, it was more thought out. And the villain is better realized. He actually looks scary in the Snyder version, as opposed to he looks kind of comical in the Justice League version. We're going to call it Justice League because Joss Whedon was involved. I think that's pretty much the standard, right? I mean, his motivations were more clear as well. He wants to impress Darkseid to get back in his good graces. Clearly, he screwed up somewhere, and he's trying to take over Earth to kind of get back in with... they don't explicitly say that, but Steppenwolf is... Darkseid's uncle. So they're really he's trying to get back in good with the family. So that makes sense. I mean, right? Who couldn't understand that? You're trying to make good with your family, except instead of trying to make a pie for Thanksgiving, you're trying to take over a planet instead. All right, good, great. Actually, having Darkseid featured was a nice touch. You can kind of that's a lesson I think they learned from the MCU. Thanos, they didn't build him up enough in the movies leading up to Infinity War, so he kind of, to some people, the casual fans, feels like he comes out of nowhere. So if you have the Snyder version, you kind of get the sense of, oh, okay, this is a villain that's going to matter more later, and he's the puppet with the strings in the background, et cetera, et cetera. So it made more sense in that regard. The Justice League version was hokey, too jokey, and it's just full of cringe moments. The Flash falling in Wonder Woman's cleavage is it's just crude and kind of beneath them for a movie that you're trying to treat seriously. It's way worse when you know the story behind the filming of it. And if you want to, you could look up the story behind that. Basically, they used the body double, didn't tell Gal Gadot that this was what they were going to do. And watch, well, actually, I'll tell you the story. So basically, they hired a body double to come in. And if you notice, the part where he's actually falling into her, on top of her, Wonder Woman's head is kind of turned away from the camera. And then the next thing you know, you see a reaction shot of her just kind of looking up like, what's going on? So that part is Gal Gadot, and they just spliced the two scenes together, and they didn't even tell Gal Gadot that that's what they were doing, and it just feels kind of creepy. Like, why did we need that? I guess to show how much the Flash is a klutz, and he's still figuring himself out. But I don't know. It felt unnecessary. The Snyder version gets rid of all the silliness and gives the ZC feel we've always wanted, but does have its confusing moments as well. Martian Manhunter being anywhere in this film seems kind of shoehorned. Especially he doesn't show up in the climax, so why introduce him at all? And then he shows up way at the end for an end credit scene and goes, all right, the next time I got you guys. We're next time. I missed this time, but next time we're good. It's like, well, we could have used you, really. Overall, I liked it, though. I don't want to seem like I'm trashing it. Obviously, way too long for too many repeat viewings. It's over 6 hours of content. Very, very good. Climax felt much better, with the Flash running back in time. Beautiful, love it. Give me more of that. Cyborg obviously is the emotional and the heart of the movie, and you really get the sense that Ray Fisher got screwed in the movie, and we'll get more into that a little later when we go back into the characters. All right, Aquaman. This one was surprisingly good, and it made the most money out of all the movies we're going to talk about here today. I think Jason Momoa grew immensely from Justice League to here. He found a good place with the character very quickly. It didn't take him long. I think he learned from Chris Hemsworth, frankly, with Thor, but didn't go as silly with like the Ragnarok and Love and Thunder version, which is nice. Which is nice that he didn't take it quite that far. Despite her off-screen issues, Amber Heard was solid, I thought. William Dafoe was always a win. It's the tale of two brothers fighting for the throne. It's a classic storyline, but it's done nicely. The visuals are fantastic, right down to how the hair floats underwater, which I understand is mostly CGI, but it looks pretty cool. Momoa plays the reluctant hero well. I do wish there was more of a connection to the remaining DCU, but this is the movie where you can start to see the studio backing off from making everything connected and really making the Easter eggs more background noise than it being more part of the main story, which, again, that's my biggest problem with Warner Bros. Discovery. It's failure to commit, but again, we'll get into that. All right, Shazam, another good installment. Zachary Levi plays a great kid who gets thrown into an adult body, and oh yeah, by the way, he's a superhero. Something that was done with 13 going on 30 and Big, except, yeah, you're a superhero. Great stuff. The Seven Deadly Sins looked way too similar, and it wasn't apparent which one was which. I just wish I didn't have to Google it later. And even then, it's still tough to pick them out once you find out who's who. They just look like the dark gray black creatures with red eyes, and again, they just look too similar. I wish they were more distinct like they were in the comics. But Mark Strong, great performance, great presence. I did fall on the floor laughing when Strong and Levi are floating above the city, and Mark Strong is monologuing, and Levi just goes, "What? Am I supposed to hear you?" It's just, it's something that people have always kind of said in jokey under their breath, but it was a funny line, and it's a lighthearted superhero movie, so it's good stuff, classic stuff. I did feel like they rushed the Shazam family, but it is what it is. The Superman cameo that somehow didn't include Henry Cavill is just a fail. I don't care whose fault it is. I don't. You don't introduce that Superman, that suit, and then you shoot him from here down, from the neck down. You make it happen, and if you don't, then you recast. And if, Cavill really wasn't interested, if that's what would happen, then you just do the thing you need to do, and you just recast him as somebody who looks similar enough to be him, and then you just use him going forward. Again, it's something that kind of bothered me, because if you're trying to have a shared universe, have a shared universe. Don't half do the jokes like that. Birds of Prey, good God, what was that? Margot Robbie again, she's good as Harley, no complaints about her. Her outfits were kind of weird throughout the movie. They skim over her actually breaking it off with the Joker. So the last time we see her, Joker's breaking out of prison. The next time you see her, oh, they're done. Again, this might have been a good place to insert the Joker and have him be the focal point, but that's what they did. They spend the rest of the movie of her getting over it by railing against the movie's main villain, Black Mask. It was mostly forgettable, except for Ewan McGregor's head exploding at the end, which was, interesting. And finally, the most accurate feeling Harley Quinn outfit is worn by not her. So it's a weird move. It's weird moves by DC. I don't understand it. It was nice to see her hyenas, though. That was a nice touch. And then she called one Bruce. Oh, that's great. Love it. Wonder Woman 1984. This movie is a tale of... It's the tale of two halves. If you're watching a football game and, if you're really ahead in the first half and then you blow the lead in the second half, that would be this movie. It started out good with the jealousy that Barbara Minerva feels towards Diana. It leans heavily on the careful what you wish for trope, which is great. I liked that part, those aspects of the movie. You can make whatever you want come true, but there's going to be a cost, and you're going to find out that cost later. It's definitely a life lesson in there somewhere. Movie was chugging along. Wonder Woman goes and rapes a man. Oh yeah, she definitely did. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's a weird move, especially for a female director to do something like that. I just feel like a woman would have been more sensitive to such a subject, but okay, it's what she did. Third act had a fight that was way too dark and over too fast. Then it was a question of, let me check my notes here, convincing all people on the planet to reverse their wish so they could all could be right with the world. Or maybe the lasso of truth made them. I don't know. The movie doesn't make it clear what exactly is going on. Obviously, the lasso is involved, but I just, again, it doesn't feel like it's clear what's going on. And I feel like that's a fail on any movie if your audience doesn't know what's going on. The decision to omit Wonder Woman's sword is strange. I guess she was going for like a non-violent thing, but it's a movie that's put between Batman v Superman and her first movie, timeline-wise, and she uses the sword in one movie, stops using it, and then starts using it again, and it feels weird. It's a shame that's going to end up being Gal Gadot's last outing. It really is. All right. The Suicide Squad. First of all, movies need to stop adding thought to the movies to reboot it, to distinguish from the original. Like I said, it's just confusing. I don't think too many people like it. Regardless of that, movie itself feels infinitely more like the Suicide Squad. It was gory, it was funny, people died, a lot of people died, main characters died. Again, gory, the final boss, as it were, Staryu, was the Conqueror, was great. It had stakes. The black and white footage of him taking over the first few people felt very classic horror to me. It was a nice touch. Killing Rick Flag felt heavy. Now, here's the thing. You killed the character. You introduced him in one movie. You sort of had him have a little bit of a story. You introduced him in the second movie. Okay, he goes along, and then he dies at the end. That to me, you got to do that. You can't just introduce a character in one movie and then kill them off right away. It does lose points by replacing Will Smith with Idris Elba, using an almost identical character and backstory. With him having the issues with his daughter, he's in prison, and then he just recruit. He's a heck of a shot, and it's like, come on, it's basically the same character. And that's nothing against Idris Elba. Obviously, he's a win, obviously, but it just feels off. But other than that, it was everything that the comics felt like it was. It's a team sent in to do the cleanup, and they're expendable. It was a mission that they could have handled, certainly, and then all heck breaks loose because at the end, Staryu the Conqueror gets out, and then they have to have the big CGI fight. But it doesn't bother me, that one, for some reason. I don't know why. The mass death at the end, it was kind of glossed over as well, and it's just but no, overall I like the movie. It was over the top funny, over the top gory. It was great. All right, next up, we're gonna put the Peacemaker series in here because technically it counts. It continues the feel of the Suicide Squad, and what do you guys know? John Cena can actually act. It's really weird that because he's the reason I stopped watching WWE. I hated his character on WWE, and I hated the push he got. I stopped watching, and yet he's great here. Great addition to the Suicide Squad, and great addition to give him his own show. The main villain of the first season it's gross. Again, it's gory and violent, but it's continuing on that same feel. I love that they passed this off to Amanda Waller's underlings to run things for Peacemaker, and she even gets a brief cameo. Having her does grant some legitimacy, to the connected universe, and Cena was much deeper. And when we first saw him in the Suicide Squad, he's not just the oaf, he's trying to do what he thinks of as patriotic, which is obviously tainted by his white supremacist father. So he's kind of trying to come to terms with the fact that his father's such a crappy person, but he's still trying to be this patriotic, good person, and he's trying to wrestle with that, which I thought was a good direction to go. It's silly when it needs to be, and it gets serious when it needs to be. I love the Justice League showing up too late to do anything about this global threat, which is nice because how many times have in the MCU have we said, this seems like a big deal. Where are the other Avengers? Like, shouldn't they be getting involved? So it was nice that they showed up. They were just too late to do anything about it. Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller give us some insight as to which direction Warner Bros. Discovery is leaning as far as what they want to keep. Again, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it's another cameo where we assume it to be Cavill, but it's just a silhouette along with Wonder Woman and Batman, who we don't know which versions of those there are. I feel like this is where decisions were made at Warner Brothers Discovery as to what's going to happen going forward, although we'll see. All right, last one, the one that killed it, Black Adam. This was the final nail in the coffin for DC, and it's a real shame. The Rock does what The Rock does. He was solid, pun intended. The story was unique in that he wasn't the chosen one, but rather his son was, who sacrificed himself for The Rock, and then The Rock had the abilities, and he just has to keep going forward. Introducing the Justice Society was nice. Although, once again, mainstream audiences would be confused since they are seeing at least two of these characters for the first time, Atom Smasher and Cyclone. Well, I guess three, Dr. Fate. And, Dr. Fate, I feel like, if you played Injustice 2, you've been introduced to him already. And Hawkman, I think, is a little more well-known. Again, introducing a slew of new characters when you only have 2 hours is a mistake, and they've done it multiple times throughout the DCU. I did love Dr. Fate up until they killed him in his first movie, just to show us that this new villain was serious. Like, you could have taken any of the other, well, actually, maybe not Hawkman, but any of the other two, and that would have been fine by me. They didn't pretend Black Adam was a good guy, which was nice. They tend to do that a lot in these some of these villain origin stories. Like, well, he's really a good guy, he's just misunderstood. But no, they went for it with this one. They were straightforward with it from the jump. Of course, he had to team up with the Justice Society take down the real villain, but that was fine. You had to give him something to, do. Otherwise, it's unsatisfying. Adding Amanda Waller was always a win. The Henry Cavill cameo. It comes years too late, but it's there. It was nice. It got fans excited, only to have the movie ultimately not make a profit, fail, and kill the DCEU for good just a few short weeks later. I mean, it's a shame. He finally gets involved, and it's too little too late, unfortunately. It's a shame. And I get it. I understand the friendship between the two of them. I understand The Rock really tried to take the reins here, and he really tried to, bring the DCU back. He tried to revive it, but, I'm just the coroner here. It was dead at that point, unfortunately. All right, so we'll go through the cast one at a time. To give you my thoughts on casting and I can't do everybody. We'd be here forever, unfortunately. Again, it would be a 6-hour podcast if I did every single character that appeared on screen. So if you think I shorted anybody, by all means, list them below. I'll try and give you my thoughts on them. But we'll start with the character that put the super in superhero, the OG Superman, Henry Cavill. I think he did a fine job in the role. I'll give him a 7 out of 10. Just for reference, we'll have Robert Downey Jr. and put him as a 10 for being Iron Man. George Clooney gets a 1 for Batman. Again, for reference, just so you guys can get an idea. I think he did what was asked of him for his one standalone movie. He did okay in Batman v Superman. Let's be honest, he didn't get much of a chance in Justice League. He shows up in the middle to end of the second act, so he wasn't in it for long for either of the cuts of the movie. I think he was a little stiff at times, and to be fair, it's such a hard role to play. Brandon Routh, to a greater extent, was worse in his one chance at the live-action movie version. I'm not talking about what happened on the CW verse, just the movie, to be fair. Brandon Routh was very stiff in his role. So, it's tough. It's an intimidating character to play. No one can look as comfortable in the role as Christopher Reeves did. That's really the bottom line, I think, is what we're coming to. Cavill had the best looking outfit, though, to be fair. But Reeves had the presence, and he gets a 10 out of 10. But we're obviously not talking about him here. But I would have liked for Cavill to get a few more chances in universe. Apparently he did, because he was offered cameo roles, and he kept turning them down. And it's just like, do you want the role or don't you? After the first 3 movies, they never seemed to know what they wanted to do with him. You kept hearing rumors of Man of Steel 2, rumors he would appear there, everywhere, but he was in, he was out, he was beloved, he was hated by the studio executives maybe, and then he returned to be killed for good 5 weeks later. It's just, the inconsistency was unfortunate. It was a sad ending when he never really got to begin. Wonder Woman. Okay, so now you have an idea of my rankings. Let's move on to the Princess of Themyscira, Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. She gets a 9 out of 10. Fantastic. She nailed the look to a T. She was gorgeous, of course, but had this fierce look when she got serious that let you know she was about to kick some ass. She was perfect in her fish out of water performance in her standalone movie. Her entrance in Batman v Superman was the moment of the entire movie, as we discussed. I still get chills when I think about it. It's a shame they ruined the entire third act in the trailer, but again, you can't hold the trailer against the movie itself. If I had any kind of self-control, I would have watched any of the trailers and I would have lost my mind, but very few people have that kind of self-control. She was great in Justice League, both versions, and I actually yelled during the Snyder Cut when she was going to cut Steppenwolf's head off. That was great. I was watching it with my wife, and as soon as Superman punched him and he started flying towards Steppenwolf, and he started flying towards the portal, I yelled, "Wonder Woman, take his head off!" And my wife was like, "Relax, it's a movie." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm getting excited here." It was great. The music was overplayed, but again, not her fault. Snyder just found a tune he liked, and he kind of went with it. Wonder Woman 84 had issues, as we discussed, but none of them were her fault. She played the hero part perfectly, and she was great at being vulnerable when it was appropriate. Again, wanted to see more of her, but sadly, we won't get to. It doesn't feel like it anyway. Batman, The Dark Knight, Batfleck. Batfleck was kind kind of there, which was interesting because when he first was announced, not a lot of people liked it, and I was kind of like, well, give him a shot. And now it's kind of reversed. Everyone seems to like him, and I'm like, eh. He had a great look when he had the suit on, and he built himself up for the part, which was a nice touch. Not every actor or actress hits the gym when it's time to be a superhero. So I appreciate the fact that he went all in. He's a taller guy to start with, which is great. And then he just really went all out for the movie. I remember watching Gone Girl, which was a movie came out shortly before the first Batman movie, Superman. I remember watching that movie and going, my God, he's huge already. Like, he's already trying to get in superhero mode. Excuse me. Okay, so playing an older Batman was a risk. They did pull it off, I believe. When we first meet him, he's running around during the effects of the third act of Man of Steel, which was cool to see, an outsider's perspective of the final fight, how scary it was to somebody who, as great as he is still a mere mortal. Batman was powerless, and it really sows the seeds of his distrust of Superman and his fear taking over. It explains the look on his face, how scared he was when he runs into Superman towards the middle of the film, because he knows, like, I'm in no shape to fight him at this point. But he does compose himself. He gives him the "Do you bleed?" line, which was great. The little Robin Easter egg alludes to how things have been going in Gotham, which isn't well. He had one of the best, probably the best Batman fight sequences ever during the third act of the movie, freeing Martha. Felt very much Arkham Asylum from the video games. If you played them, it really made you feel like you were playing a video game. Him bringing the Justice League together makes a ton of sense. For the one hero without super abilities, you got to give him something to do. You can't have somebody else put the whole Justice League together. So I hope they continue to do that. It'll be expected, but I hope they do that. I think he was okay, but being he never got a solo movie, and Christian Bale, he like just finished up like in 2011, and to introduce him then in 2016, I mean that's kind of close if you're asking me. So it's still fresh in our minds. That's why you got to give his outing of Superman a 6 out of 10. Not hated, but he didn't excite me the way other Batman have in the past. All right, Aquaman, the King of Atlantis. This is a great example of someone who could grow into the role and improve. I think I mentioned Chris Hemsworth growing into the role previously. And Jason Momoa doing a little bit better at that. We've gotten 2 chances to see what he can do. Aquaman was portrayed as this tough guy, loner, I don't care about your team kind of guy. Ultimately changed his mind once he saw that Atlantis wasn't safe. He does the most to somehow look exactly like Aquaman while looking nothing like his comic book counterpart, which is really an amazing feat. Again, you take the Aquaman that you traditionally see, the short blonde hair, and then you take Jason Momoa, he's got the long dark hair, facial hair, and it's just like he looks nothing like the character, but somehow it still works. It still really works for him. He does transition to more of a goofy character who initially doesn't care about Atlantean problems until his father's life is threatened, and then he realizes he's got to take action. It was a nice touch, giving him one of the few superheroes who ended up with 2 living parents by the end of the movie. I always love it when they avoid cliches, so you always get points for me on that one. He plays the reluctant hero great and consistently, while still showing more depth as he went along. His relationship with Mara felt kind of typical. She's serious, he's goofy. How will they get along? Uh-oh, they fell in love. Who knew? He does look a little bit goofy in the traditional Aquaman garb, but let's be honest, they change it for the next movie. So we'll see if they do. They can't help themselves. They'll just do it. I liked the more muted colors in the first outfit, if I'm being fair about it. But again, 7 out of 10. I'll rank him, a little bit above Batfleck in that regards. The fact they are considering keeping him is a good move, whether he stays on as Aquaman or going to be Lobo. We've heard Lobo being a consideration for him, so we'll see. All right, Cyborg, Mr. Ray Fisher. This one was tough to rank. First of all, we only got him for one movie and has somehow got two movies out of him at the same time. The versions of the Justice League are so different in certain places, but they're never more apparent than with this character. In the Justice League version, he's a little wooden, he's got daddy issues, he's front and center during the third act, and yet somehow doesn't really pop at any point. But then you watch the Snyder Cut version, and you got to give him a 9 out of 10. You really get a better idea of why he hates his father, the accident, his playing career, the experiment. He's front and center in the middle of the movie, leading the team into the Kryptonian ship to resurrect Superman. The sacrifice of Silas Stone was a devastating change for this version that becomes important later. The third act, when he's being tempted by the 3 mother boxes, was awesome. I'm not broken and I'm not alone. It's a great line. Oh my God, what a great line. As his biological family fades away, when he starts pulling the boxes away, his Justice League family comes into focus behind them. He pulls the boxes apart with Superman, and thus the illusion fades away completely, and it reveals, again, the Justice League family all around him. It's perfect. It's a shame he can't be higher, because I needed to see more. He definitely deserved to be featured more. It's a shame about the behind the scenes nonsense. I don't know what happened, but I do know when an actor gets shafted in a movie, and I think that's why Warner Brothers Discovery didn't want a second version to come out, because you would see exactly this kind of stuff. Maybe not this specifically, but they didn't want to be embarrassed, and they were kind of embarrassed by this. Let's be fair. But obviously the universe is gone. I wouldn't be surprised if the actor never works for Warner Brothers Discovery ever again. I mean, how do you trust the studio after they, treat you like that? They take your character completely, you're being introduced and you're like the least featured. So it's tough to make your presence known when nobody's giving you the chance. All right, next up, The Flash. I dreaded ranking this one. He's such a garbage human being with his antics, and yet he's one of the last ones still technically standing, and he might actually survive this after all. His suit was weird in Justice League. It didn't seem like someone would ever be comfortable running around in it. It looked okay, which I guess is what they were going for, but the practicality of it didn't feel like it was there. Again, we only get one movie and really 2 to 3 experiences with him. Obviously, he shows up for a couple of brief cameos in Batman v Superman. He shows up a little bit in Justice League for one scene, which again should have been part of his own standalone movie, but I digress. Again, he was okay in the Justice League version. There's a recurring theme here. And he was a little more fleshed out in the Snyder Cut. His time reversal in the third act was reminiscent of Superman when he flew backwards and went back in time in the Christopher Reeves first Superman movie. So really good stuff. It's epic, it's iconic, it's saddened by the fact that he's such a terrible person in real life and has caused people real hurt and pain. I do try to separate the art from the artist as much as I can, but man, it's tough in this day and age. It really is. It just seems like nobody wants to make that distinction anymore. And if you try to, it's, you're just excusing it. So I don't want to get too political with it, but, it's tough. This is one we might have to revisit this once his movie comes out. 5 out of 10 for Justice League, 7 out of 10 for the Snyder Cut, with an asterisk. Again, how they consider keeping him is beyond me. I don't know how you center a universe around somebody with that many issues. But I do understand it, though. The Flash movie has been in developmental heck since Justice League came out in 2017. It's taken them 6 years to get this movie going and out finally. And, with directors and different things, it's, I can understand them saying, look, we cannot do anything different at this point. We just have to just push forward and just do it. And, we'll handle later when later comes. All right, next, Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie does everything asked of her and does a great job of bringing her character to life. She does lose points by being a bit more sane than her comic cartoon counterparts. That's right, I said it. She grounded the character a bit too much. The cocaine scene in Birds of Prey was silly. Her outfits got increasingly less iconic somehow as her stint as Harley went on, which is the reverse of what you usually do. Usually you give the character a more realistic outfit, and then you move more towards the comic book accurate outfits. That's generally what comic movies do, but this one did the reverse. The beginning of The Suicide Squad was about as close as we ever got to her having a real Harley Quinn outfit, and then they quickly have her change into this random red dress for the rest of the film. Which, again, if they'd done better with her outfits at that point, I would have understood it a little bit more, but, having her be in the red dress through 2/3 of the movie was kind of weird. Cramming her origin flashbacks into a crowded movie in the Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad, but Suicide Squad, felt like they didn't really do the character justice. Guys, we need a Joker Harley Quinn movie, and if you want to make it a Batman movie, that's fine, but you really need one to flush everything out. I mean, it's such an interesting backstory, and there's a reason she's a popular character. Like, she really should have had that opportunity, and we just, again, never going to see it. That being said, she felt like Harley Quinn. She was funny, she was sadistic at times. I just wish they spent longer and took their time. Again, it's a common theme. She gets an 8 out of 10. Amanda Waller. Viola Davis is always a win. She grants more credibility to the DCU as anybody else on this list. She pulls off the cold, calculating, plotting anti-villain, but villain expertly. We've come to expect from Miss Davis. She's great, and you don't need me to tell you that. These are things you already know. It's great that they keep bringing her back, like a DC Nick Fury that's really a villain, but it kind of works. 9 out of 10 for her. I'm glad they're considering keeping her, although, again, it's kind of an interesting choice. Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg. Good God. I get what they were trying to do with giving him a crazy genius vibe, but he just dialed it up way too much, and the genius not enough. He never felt super smart. Plotting, sure, but he never felt like super smart, like he was outsmarting anybody. He just felt like a rich guy who hated Superman for reasons. They never really get into. I mean, they do it a little bit, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't jive, unfortunately. I need more in the motivation department, not just he's got daddy issues. The motivation was too vague for me. He gets a 6 out of 10. He probably won't be back. Let's be fair. Which is a shame. I do like Jesse Eisenberg. Great in The Social Network. So, I mean, it's nothing against the actor. I just, what happened here just didn't work for me. Lois Lane. ADM Adams seems never felt connected with the rest of the film she was in. She's obviously a great actress, and maybe she was just misused. The romance was rushed between Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and you just don't feel her grief when Superman dies. You don't feel her grieving as much as I feel like we should. There's that awkward scene with her and Martha in Justice League and the thirsty comment, which just feels juvenile. The Snyder Cut version, she has a nice scene with, which is the antithesis of the Justice League scene in Snyder Cut. It's her and Martha talking, and then Martha ends up being Martian Manhunter. So it takes all the gravity of the conversation out of the way. And you just go, well, okay, that was a weird choice, but okay. We never get a Man of Steel 2 sequel, so we never get to flush her out. So it kind of falls flat. I hate to say it, but I kind of give her a 5 out of 10 on that one. Just because, again, it never really... It never really is fully realized. Again, common theme. Green Lantern. Now, I know what you're saying. He wasn't in the DCEU, but they teased it, and they never delivered, and it's probably one of the DCEU's biggest sins. They showed us a scene in Justice League with a random Green Lantern dying, and a comments by Steppenwolf that, saying, hey, there's no lanterns on this planet, and they never touch upon it again, and it's really puzzling. I know they were part of the initial plan, the initial slate that Kevin Smith and Jeff Johns came out with. But it's another big piece of evidence that they were never really following a plan. For this one, you get a 0 out of 10 because we never got it. They were clearly scared of such a heavily CGI-dependent character and didn't want to commit out of fear it would bomb again. The Ryan Reynolds version, I guess they're really scared of that happening again, and I think that's why they didn't revisit it in the DCEU. I am glad we're getting a new series to flesh everything out. I just hope they spend the money on the CGI to impress everybody, and they don't half-butt it this time. Everyone else, again, I can't cover every single character. I covered those that I felt were big players in the DCU. If you're curious about a more specific character that I haven't mentioned, please, mention it in the comments or tweet it at me, and I'll give you my 2 cents either in a comment or maybe I'll do a YouTube short or something like that. Alfred was good. Again, good, not great. Commissioner Gordon, again, good, not great. Perry White, Lawrence Fishburne, he was pretty good. He was solid. Featured enough, I felt, in the movies he was in. Just a few off the top of my head. I didn't take notes on those on this part. Kind of winging it. All right. So before we move on, that's pretty much my thoughts on the DCU to this point. I did want to touch briefly on the remaining slate. First, we got Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Again, I'll be interested to see how much it actually connects to the larger DCEU. He did post a TikTok recently where he feels like he's coming back, Zachary Levi, for the next series. Again, I feel like everything from here on out, all the movies that are coming from here on out, I think it depends on how they do at the box office. If they think they're going to do well and they're a selling point, they'll bring the characters and actors back. And if they bomb, they're just going to say, okay, sorry, no, we rebooted, didn't we tell you? So, again, the first Shazam was good. It was fun, a lot of fun. And I expect more of the same because, he's an actor who can bring the fun. So let's do it. Blue Beetle, truth be told, I'm not super familiar with this character. I haven't read a tremendous amount of comics, not as many as I would have liked to have read. My experience is very limited to Injustice 2, the game. He does seem interesting with his power set. Seems like he's got something with nanotech or something. I'm just confused how Batgirl gets canned, but Blue Beetle is still around, considering their accessibility to mainstream audience. I'll be there opening weekend. I'll give it a shot. I just, and obviously I hope to learn a lot more about the character, the power set, and everything going forward. It just feels, a little weird. The Flash movie. Oh God, I'm a huge Flash fan. Thank you, Grant Gustin, for helping me fall in love with the character. I've read a lot of the New 52 Flash comics. Flashpoint is obviously a great comic book. But this movie has been in developmental heck since 2017, as we discussed. Directors, script changes, reshoots, added cameos, removing cameos, adding new cameos. It'll be a miracle if they put a coherent movie on the big screen. It really will. I'll always be here for a multiversal movie. It does seem like The Flash will visit quite a few universes, so that could be both exciting and intriguing. You could really get to, play in a sandbox and give you a lot of really cool Easter eggs. And you could do it in a better way than Doctor Strange did in Multiverse of Madness, because they'd only really go to like 2 or 3 universes, and it's very Doctor Strange centric, so you never really get to see too much else other than the one Illuminati team up, and that's it. Ezra is still live in the DC going forward, but again, the box office is going to have the final say. And truth be told, I did have to rewrite this section after seeing the Flash trailer from Sunday. My God, I was extremely excited by what I was seeing in that trailer. It does feel like a Flashpoint movie with the addition of Michael Keaton. It makes it so much more nostalgic, and bringing back the Danny Elfman theme is a very solid move. And that's one real criticism I'll have of Snyder. He didn't understand nostalgia for these characters. He was trying to make them his own thing, and he tried to ground them in reality, but it's nostalgia will always put butts in the seats, always. And we just never got the original themes. Oh no, we need our own themes. And I like the Man of Steel theme, but nothing beats the John Williams Superman theme from 1977. Nothing beats it. He does his best work in 2 films, Superman and Star Wars, and they come out within a few short years of each other. So whatever he was drinking at the time, I want some of that. All right, so yeah, looking forward to it. Very excited for it. Um, I do think it's going to do well at the box office, and I think my feeling is they're going to try and find a way to keep him around too, Ezra Miller. But it really depends on how he performs. Aquaman 2, sure, count me in. First one was a lot of fun. I felt like it was more a fun version of Black Panther with the fight for the throne. Instead of cousins, they're brothers this time. And it's no shade meant at Black Panther. They just had a different feel to them. They were going for different things. Aquaman visually reminded me of Avatar if it was underwater. I haven't seen the new Avatar movie yet, so I don't know. Maybe it looks a lot like Aquaman too. I don't know. I'm here for it. Glad they didn't do that trench spinoff. I had a bad feeling about that when they said, "Oh, we're gonna do a trench." I was like, That was a good scene. Don't get me wrong. That was a very great scene with him going down in the trench and the flare, and you just see all the fish monsters all around. Very cool, but ultimately I didn't think that was going to work. Final thoughts on the DCEU. Why did it fail? Money. Only one film crosses the $1 billion mark, and it hasn't crossed the $500 million mark since then. Granted, there was a pandemic in there that kills two of the movie's box office, but if there's no money, they will not make it. This isn't a charity, unfortunately. That's the cold reality. If you like it, go see it. That's the ultimate lesson. The two non-DCEU movies that came out, I'm talking about the Joker and I'm talking about The Batman. Speaking of my hatred of the word the, they made more money than 7 of the 11 DCEU movies. I mean, and the two of them combined almost make as much as the entire DCEU movie slate. I mean, it's, those are facts. And that's why those two properties are going to survive in the Elseworlds. And, there's so much that gets lost in the shared universe. I think they got scared by the lack of success of Justice League, and they ran away from the connectivity of the universe since. And you can't do that. You got to be either all in or not. You need to be George Steinbrenner. I'm a Mets fan, but still, you need to be George Steinbrenner. George worried about putting a winning product on the field. Damn the cost, damn the obstacles, worry about the money later. And look, he made a ton of money that way. Just win, baby. Just worry about making the best product available and not be knee-jerking on Sunday afternoon when the box office numbers come in each week. Frankly, they're still doing it. I think it's why Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa haven't been canned yet. They want to see how they do at the box office now that DCU is dead and the DCU is on the horizon. They want to see which players they want to bring back for next season, quote unquote. I get it, but maybe wait until the current slate is done before even announcing the next 4 movies. Because it feels like they don't matter at this point, or maybe they matter. You're kind of playing around with the information that you're putting out there. I do think that they had good pieces. As I said, casting was generally good to great in some plays. Tone was good, and it made sense from movie to movie. The Justice League felt like the Suicide Squad felt like Suicide Squad. Snyder Cut Justice League felt like Justice League. It felt super serious, and oh my god, we need to fight to save the freaking universe. The connectivity does seem to matter less and less as time went on, and you could see in the box office people lose interest. Marvel is successful. Again, I know you're going to hate this, DC events, but Marvel is successful because people are afraid they're going to miss something important and be lost for the team-up movie. When you give up on that and give us no sign there's going to be a team-up movie in the future, then you could skip certain movies and only show up for the ones you really like, because with few exceptions, they started to become more and more self-contained. That's just how I feel. I do wish them well in the future. I hope they succeed. I'm excited to be introduced to new characters. I'll be their opening weekend from now on, and if you want DC to succeed, you should too. I just ask that people be reasonable. They are never going to restore the Snyderverse. That's something people need to understand. Not now. The most recent installment gave you Superman back. It gave you the Snyderverse feel. It was the most Snyderverse feel movie you got outside of the Snyder Cut in a long time. Even if it's only for a cameo, and nobody showed up. Even after the news leaked, it still The movie went through its typical drops week after week. Black Adam lost money, guys. They lost money. I know they tried to say that, oh no, but with the money transferred around, it actually did make a profit. It's like the company lost money on the deal. The overall company lost money. And that's what the company's going to look at. But you got to pick a path. You can't share a hashtag and then refuse to show up. So it's dead. The Snyderverse is gone. Let's move on. Future. I, for one, am excited and confused by the new slate of movies. We're going to have 3 Batmans going in all media right now, guys. Actually, more than that, if you want to count Batfleck coming back. Let's see. Who do we have? We got Batfleck, Michael Keaton, at least, unless they have a surprise for us in the new movie. You got Pattinson, who's still current. Diedrich Bader, who's on the Harley Quinn show. And whoever else you end up casting to be part of the new DCU. They say that it's going to be a new casting. So you're going to have 5 Batmans going at once. That's confusing. You really need to consolidate. That's what you really need to do. You can't throw out 80% of what's here and expect people to just be okay with it. DC, again, wants to have its cake and eat it too. Matt Reeves did really well, so they want to keep it, naturally. But Reeves may not want to be part of the larger cinematic universe, so that might be the reason for the decision here. I think it's a bad move. It makes it messy. It's more of the same. I do love some of the new ideas, though. I don't want to make it seem like I'm complaining already. Paradise Lost, the new Themyscira spinoff, is interesting. And the fact that they're billing it as a Game of Thrones style, political alliances, type of deal. I was a huge fan of Game of Thrones, except for the last episode and a half, like most people. A new Superman is long awaited. I like that he's towards the beginning of the new DCU, similar to the way Man of Steel was. So I like that that's what they're doing. Can't wait for that. Supergirl seems like they are doing a new spin-off on it. So to keep it fresh and not being a retread of what they're had done during the TV show, because the TV show seemed it was very light, and she had adopted parents who loved her, and she was a happy-go-lucky person. And this Supergirl that we're going to get in the new DCU seems like it's going to be more of a war, a bitter. She was hopped from place to place, and she's a refugee, and then she lands on the planet and she's hardened, and that'll be more interesting, I think. But again, DCU is going to be confusing because you're going to get Supergirl later on this year in June. So you're going to have Supergirl and then turn around and have another Supergirl. So gets confusing. Lantern's TV show can be really something special, and something that frankly has been rumored for a couple of years. So I'm glad they're finally getting that across. I'm going to lump these 3 together. Creature Commandos, The Authority, and Booster Gold. Not so much Booster Gold. I have seen him in comics, but these are all properties that are kind of new to me. So I'm excited to see what they're all about, but at the same time, it's confusing why you would put them in so early on. I would have built the momentum with established products before you jump into relative unknowns. I don't like Gunn keeping Waller and all the stuff that he's connected with. It kind of just seems like, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. It kind of screams corruption, frankly. Either all has to go or none of it does, and you just try and fix it from here on out. Casual fans are going to get confused seeing some of the same actors around, but not others. If you have a Justice League and you got Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, and then everyone else is different, everyone's going to go, wait a minute, didn't I see them over there with other actors? I don't understand. But that kind of seems the direction that they're going. But here's to the future. There's still decisions to be made. Flash, Aquaman, Blue Beetle, Shazam. I could feel different about this around Christmas time next year. So, we can certainly revisit this. We're getting 4 DC movies before the new guard takes over. So let's see how they perform now that they know the DCU is sort of DOA. But that's my thoughts. Again, not perfect. No cinematic universe is perfect. So far, Marvel's been the only one that's been able to really do it successfully and kind of really gain some traction. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comments below on YouTube. If you're listening, hop over to YouTube, give me your comments there. You can come find us on Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Podcasts available wherever podcasts are available: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, iHeartRadio, etc. My name is Jim. I have been your pal for today, and this has been the Jim Powell Podcast. Thank you so much.